Oh my God, let's talk about lesbian bed death. If you don't know, lesbian bed death is this idea that lesbians in long-term relationships have sex less and less frequently and sometimes eventually stop having sex altogether. I've heard of this on TikTok, on social media. It's talked about amongst my friends. I know some couples where I'm like, they're kind of in lesbian bed death, like it's kind of like a bad thing to say about somebody, but I've never really looked into like, is there proof to back this up? And the answer is kinda. I'll share it with you. You guys tell me what you think. I'm gonna break the book down because it actually pissed me off when I looked into it. I feel like the immediate first conclusion you can make if you don't think about it very hard is like men have higher sex drives than women. So 2 women in a relationship means overall there's less sex. You might even go on to say it might be less clear about who the initiator is gonna be. Oh my God, women are less sexual. Oh my God, lesbians aren't having that much sex. Oh my God, lesbian life sucks. Wrong conclusions. And I will prove it to you. Let's get into, is lesbian bed death real? If so, what explains it? First of all, where did the phenomenon and the term come from? It comes from the 1980s. Mind you, I'm recording this in the year of 2026, okay? The 1980s is 40 plus years ago. This is a long time ago. These people were not understanding the queer identity the way that we're doing now. And before I go on, I will be citing sources. All the sources will be linked in the description of this video, so I'm not just talking out my ass. In the early 1980s, Philip Blunstein and Pepper Schwartz conducted a survey on American relationships with initially 12,000 volunteer couples, including 788 lesbian couples. They filled out questionnaires. The study concluded that lesbian couples have less sex than heterosexual or gay male couples, and that they generally experience less sexual intimacy the longer the relationship lasts. Only about 1/3 of lesbians in relationships of 2 years or longer had sex once a week or more. 47% of lesbians in long-term relationships had sex once a month or less. Damn. They also reported that lesbians seemed to be more limited in the range of their sexual techniques than did other couples. That part really got me. I'm like, that is not only surprising to read, that is an outright contradiction to where I feel like the world is at today. Like, not enough techniques. The lesbians don't have techniques, baby. The lesbians have the most techniques. Like, please don't play. You think, who has more techniques, a straight man or a lesbian? That part, I was like, okay, so I just throw the whole study out because I'm not buying it. So pretty soon after that survey is published, the term lesbian bed death comes around. People take it and run with it. It comes into our culture. It still affects us to this day. And it's harmful in our culture because it kind of leads to this idea of like, okay, lesbians are not sexually satisfied in lesbian relationships. This is proof that lesbians aren't happy. Relationships can't thrive without a man. No man equal no sex drive equal no sex equal unhappy. That's kind of a false conclusion that people have drawn from this, and it's ridiculous and wrong. So I'm going to convince you that lesbian bed death is a myth. There's a lot of things that lesbians are actually outperforming straight couples on. And for the lesbians that do struggle with sexual frequency, there are reasons to explain it that are outside of just like gender differences or that like all lesbians are doomed, and I'll get to that too. I also have a bunch of personal opinions I'll throw in at the end. Woo! Okay, so first of all, that original study was asking about the frequency of sex. I want to say sexual frequency is not the same thing as sexual satisfaction. Picture straight relationships. How y'all doing? Just because you're having sex a lot doesn't mean that you're having good sex, that you're happy with it, that it's a sign of health in your relationship. I do have one statistic, which is that there is some correlation between relationship satisfaction and the frequency of sex, but that correlation is only up to a certain extent, and that extent was like once a week. If you're having sex once a week, in general, that's tied to happier relationships. And if you're having it more than once per week, that doesn't mean you have a happier relationship, okay? Another problem with the survey is that it's asking about, well, how many times did you have sex? And okay, for lesbians, that is a question that could be answered many different ways. What counts? You know what I'm saying? We have a whole variety of ways, especially in the 80s. Like, straight people have a very narrow definition. If we did, then we did it. And lesbians be like, well, we could have done A, B, C, D, E, F, or G, and maybe that all would have counted, or maybe none of that would have counted, okay? So we need to like have a more standardized questionnaire. Otherwise, these results really ain't giving me the conclusions y'all thought they gave. Now, later in 1995, in the Advocate Survey of Lesbian Sexuality and Relationships, results show that lesbian women had more enjoyable sex than most American women. And somehow, this data has not received the same attention as the 1983 report. Why is that? So if we are going to go along with lesbians are having less frequent sex, but they're reporting higher sexual satisfaction, well, that's a trade-off. I'm kind of like, well, well, you pick. I mean, I'm kind of down to be more satisfied. So why are we so quick to ignore the data that flies in the face of a pathologized view of lesbian sexuality? Another fact, all types of couples have a decline in sex frequency over their duration of relationships. This is not unique to lesbians. To stamp the term lesbian bed death and not stamp the term gay bed death and straight bed death, that's not gonna work. Why are we picking on the lesbians when all y'all are doing the exact same thing? This is across demographics. All of this got me thinking, like, when you look at the results of this and you're like, wow, lesbians are having less sex, like, that is bad. Straight people are having more sex, that is better. First of all, why do straight people get to be like the normal and the rest of us are just trying to compare to normal? Okay? I loved this quote. Listen to this. Lesbian bed death is a powerful and destructive term. Its development is based on misinterpretations of research, simplistic understandings about gender differences, and internalized cultural prejudices about women and lesbians. The term is a pejorative and pathologizing and woefully inadequate in communicating the complexity of sexual relating in lesbian couples. Targeting lesbian women's sexuality in this way is yet another example of misogyny masquerading as clinical objectivity, where male definitions of sexuality are used as the hallmarks of sexual health. You're like, baby, that was so dense. I don't know what you even said. Let me translate. Let me dumb it down for you. It's basically asking the question, why is men's sexual health seen as the ideal? Why are we flattening a whole community of people and trying to compare it to another group of people when there's not a fair comparison? Lesbians don't have sex in the same way. Why is sex considered like the official sex and that's the right sex, and the more of this sex that you're having, the better and more healthy y'all are, and that type of coupleship is? No, baby, no. Coupleship, is that a word? Don't matter. You know what I'm saying. The other interesting thing, have you ever heard the stereotype about gay men being like extra promiscuous, like having a lot of sex, and then lesbians are sexless, always at home, coupled up, wifed up? Okay. So we have gay guys on this extreme and lesbians on this extreme. Both of those are only extreme in comparison to what norm? To straight people norms? This article says, the underlying cultural message is gay and lesbian relationships are sick. They don't have the sexual balance of heterosexual relationships, which is a heterosexist view that complementary is necessary for relationship stability. Whoa. It's kind of like we're oversimplifying and using straight people as a norm for everything. When we say, oh, gay guys are promiscuous compared to straight people, therefore they're bad. And lesbians are sexless compared to straight people, therefore they're bad. So therefore, gay guys are bad, lesbians are bad, because y'all aren't fitting into the straight world. See, that's not a fair conclusion to draw. Now, if we broaden our definition of sex to be more than just how many times did go in, then you'll be excited to learn that lesbians report more sexual satisfaction. They report more orgasmic sex. I can't believe I'm saying this on the internet. Like, I'm so done. If you're like someone that knows me in real life, please scroll away unless you're like actually interested in this topic, because I literally can't. Lesbians have sex for longer, like literal amount of time. Average amount of time for straight people sex is 8 minutes. Lesbian sex is 30 minutes plus. Lesbians were also found to be more sexually assertive, sexually arousable, communicative about sexual needs, and more satisfied with the quality of their sexual lives than heterosexual women. This research has been consistent from the 1979 landmark study, Homosexuality in Perspective, to a 1983 article in the Journal of Sex Research, Arousability and Sexual Satisfaction in Lesbian and Heterosexual Women. These findings were also consistent to the chapter Sexual Fulfillment of Heterosexual, Bisexual, and Lesbian Women by L.C. Bressler and A.D. Lavender in the 1986 book. Some studies as far back as the 1953 McKinsey report found lesbians to be more orgasmic than heterosexual women. Okay. Hallelujah. Also, another thing to consider is the amount of like physical intimacy that's not explicitly defined as sex, like, you know, kissing, cuddling, touching, whatever. Lesbians report to higher amounts of that outside of sexual relationships. So a part of me is almost thinking like, okay, if lesbians are more like physically affectionate and like feeling more satisfied romantically at an intimacy level in their day to day outside of sex, then maybe straight couples are having less of that physical and emotional intimacy outside of sex, but use sex itself as like a way to get all of that out in one session, whereas lesbians are having physical and emotional intimacy more frequently throughout their whole day instead of just like only when they're having sex. I don't know. I don't have facts to back that one. I'm just thinking. So now in this year of 2026, people pretty much have debunked lesbian bed death as a myth. That's the discourse in the academic circles, or what the fuck ever. It's important to note that the people that came to the conclusion that lesbian bed death is real and that is because you're a lesbian, the cause is being a lesbian, the result is you're having less sex, false. Okay? The cause, you're a woman, therefore you have less sex, false. Now, there are actual like cultural phenomenon that affect women, and because there's two women in a lesbian relationships, those effects can affect both those women, and that could affect the sexual frequency. So let's talk about that. There can be a whole bunch of reasons why lesbians in particular like have unique struggles that straight couples or gay guy couples don't have. A few of them being, one, women's beauty standards affecting self-esteem, or like body image issues. Women were held to a really high standard of what our body looks like, and we're way more critical of how we look and feel according to the high beauty standard society places on us, and that affects your sexual wellness and sex life and self-esteem. Okay. Number two, sex or sexuality seen as bad or nasty or taboo for women. This is a uniquely woman thing, okay? Guys, it's like, oh my God, if you're a guy and you sleep with a lot of hot girls, it's like, damn, you're that man. Yeah, let's go. If you're a girl and you sleep with a lot of guys, it's like, whore. Am I allowed to say that on YouTube? I don't know. I'm just like, the stigma around women's sexuality does affect your sex life as an adult. And when there's two women in a relationship, it makes sense that those issues have affected those women in that relationship. So there might be like internalized shame about sex. That's one thing. A third thing is internalized homophobia. So not only is it like shame around sex, but shame around homophobia. All of these things can be like coming into play. So we don't really fully, I want to say, let your freak out because of those competing factors. Another one is menopause. Women go through menopause. So there's a drop in your sex drive. What's it called? Libido after you go through menopause. So if there's two women in the relationship, you're both going through that. You can imagine that would affect things. Also, the possibility of one or both of the partners experiencing sexual abuse or assault is higher because women face higher rates of sexual abuse and sexual assault, and that can absolutely affect your sex life. All of these can relate to lesbian sex life, but gender itself, because you're a girl and because you're a lesbian, does not cause you to have less sex, okay? And another thing that might have some weight, I'm not sure, is like your responsive versus spontaneous sex drive. It is true that men have a higher rate of like, what is it called? Let me look it up. Many studies show that on average, men report more frequent spontaneous sexual desire. Okay, spontaneous sexual desire is like out of the blue, you're like ready to go. Okay, whereas women are more likely to have a responsive sexual desire, meaning like you're in response to either someone initiating with you, you see something, like it is a reaction to something else, whereas a man has a higher rate of, it is not a reaction to someone else, it just happens. You know what I'm saying? So you could conclude that two women in a relationship are more likely to both have a more responsive sex drive. Wait, on that same line of thinking, women on average experience more context-dependent desire, meaning how are we doing in the relationship? That affects like your sex drive.
So if there's two women in the relationship and they both experience this like more context dependent desire, then maybe there's more likely of a chance for one of them to not be feeling good about the relationship. So maybe you have less sex. Why'd you have to go and make things so complicated? Like, that is just me talking out my ass. So let me know what y'all think.
In my opinion, that's a compatibility with your partner type of thing. There are, let me tell you something, there are absolutely women that initiate sex, okay, and that have spontaneous sex drive. You just gotta find a partner that's compatible with whatever your style is. That goes with a lot of these things. You can't possibly generalize a whole population of being like, all women are like this, all lesbians are like this, so we combine these two, and that is what everyone is like. Not true. People have different personalities. Some people pick good partners, some people don't. Okay, there's a whole lot of like variety here. So it's wrong and harmful to conclude that, oh, lesbians are sexless. Lastly, my personal opinion when I was first sitting down to think about this question is I was like, oh, I have an idea as to why maybe lesbians have less sex. It's because they tend to like merge with their partners. We're U-haulers. We make close friendships with our partners quickly. We become best friends. And I think a lot of people like become so intertwined and dependent on their partner. It's like almost like you become the same person. And I read this really interesting book by Esther Perel, a famous relationship therapist, relationship psychologist. She wrote this book called Mating in Captivity. It's basically about eroticism in long-term relationships. It's about like keeping your sex life active. Mind you, I was reading this when I was 22. I was just interested in a little something, okay? But one of the key takeaways from that book is that actually it's the separateness between two partners and the mystery and the individuality between two partners in the relationship that keeps that eroticism there. It is not the fact that we are merged into the same person and we have the same thoughts and we do absolutely everything together. Like that can close off the sexual connection. But when you're two fully functioning individuals in the relationship with your own rich lives, and that there is a sense of some separateness, that separateness is like the magnet that brings you together sexually. It's really counterintuitive, honestly. And so I was thinking about that in relation to lesbian bed death, and I'm like, oh, I could see how if lesbians like merge their lives, start doing everything together, we're never apart, so we never miss each other, and we become the same person, siblings or dating challenge type shit. I could see how that would like kill sexual intimacy. Or also the lesbian stereotype of like U-hauling, where you like move quickly through romantic phases and like you start living together. You can like quickly get to that old married couple vibe. And it's like, well, if you're at that old married couple vibe, you start going through old married couple problems, like not having sex a lot. So maybe your sexual frequency goes down quicker than it would in heterosexual relationships. That's me thinking out loud. If you completely merge and become completely codependent with your lesbian partner, that's going to cause a whole host of problems, not limited to your sex life. And that is not a problem that only lesbians would have. Any codependent couple would have the same problem. So it's really up to the individual to foster a healthy relationship where both parties are their own independent person. In conclusion, I used to waste time in my life worrying about the future lesbian bed death that I would experience, and I can tell you that was a waste of my time. It's a harmful myth. We should not keep using that terminology. You're not doomed if you're a lesbian. You're actually more likely to have a life of love and happiness because they do report higher rates of sexual satisfaction and physical intimacy outside of sex in general. So that actually might make you sleep better at night if you're a lesbian watching this. If you're not a lesbian watching this, girl, thanks for watching.
Also, sorry for the bi erasure in this video. I keep saying lesbian because that's what they were saying in the studies, but really I think a lot of this could apply to all sapphic couples. So sorry y'all, sorry bis, sorry pansexual, sorry all y'all, goddamn.
Anyway, this is a fun topic. I think it's so easy to get caught up in anecdotal personal experiences that you take as a generalization for the community as a whole, and looking at actual research instead of just like jumping to false conclusions is great. I would also encourage you to click on some of the links in the description of this video to go read the article. My favorite one in particular is The Big Lie, Lesbian Bed Death. It's by a lesbian with a PhD who did her doctoral dissertation on lesbian sex. I love it. If you like this video, please subscribe. I'll be making a lot more like it. Leave all of your thoughts, opinions, feedback in the comments. I want it to be like a discussion forum for all of us. So, thank you for watching. Please subscribe. And if you do, I will see you next week. Woo!